The wind howled through the broken metal towers of the old transit hub. Rusted rails twisted into the sky like jagged teeth, and half-buried crates spilled their contents across the cracked concrete. Smoke rose in thin gray ribbons from distant fires where scavengers still fought over scraps. Among the ruins, a boy moved carefully, his eyes sharp, his hands clutching the small bag his mother had packed for him. His name was Aaron, and though he was young, his shoulders carried the weight of years he should never have known. His father had been a soldier, a veteran of wars that spanned the stars, and though he was gone, the lessons he had left were heavy in Aaron's heart. The boy's stomach grumbled, a sharp reminder that food was scarce. He had only one ration left, a small pack of dried protein cubes and a handful of nutrient bars. Every step he took was measured, quiet, because the ruins were not empty. Shadows moved, and eyes watched from broken windows and the shadows of fallen towers. Aaron had learned long ago that danger could come in many forms. Thieves, rogue machines, or worse, creatures that had once been part of stories and legends. He stopped at a collapsed archway, the remnants of an old station platform. There, crouched low among the debris, was a figure he had only ever seen in drawings. Scales shimmered in the pale light, silver and gray with hints of blue, and two small wings, broken and tattered, rested against its back. The dragon was smaller than he had imagined from stories, but no less terrifying in presence. Her eyes were wide and cautious, reflecting hunger and fear. Aaron froze, holding his breath. He could feel the pulse of her heartbeat even from a distance. The dragon did not move at first, only watched him. Her tail twitched, sending dust and pebbles skittering across the cracked concrete. Aaron's first instinct was to run, as every story had told him he should. Dragons were dangerous, creatures that could incinerate a human in seconds. But then he remembered what his father had said before he left on the last mission. Courage isn't about fighting the strongest. It's about standing up for what is right, even when no one is looking. Aaron swallowed hard and opened his small bag. The smell of the food made the dragon's nostrils flare, and her eyes widened further. She moved closer, cautiously, her claws scraping the concrete as if she were afraid to step too heavily. Aaron kneeled and placed the meal on the ground, keeping his hands away, showing he meant no harm. He could see her studying him, calculating, unsure if this was a trap or a miracle. The dragon sniffed the food, then the boy. She lowered her head slowly and took a small bite. Aaron held still, his heart pounding. Each movement was slow, deliberate, to show her he would not strike. The dragon's wings twitched with each bite, and her eyes, sharp and intelligent, seemed to measure him. He wondered if she understood that he had nothing to gain from this encounter, nothing but a risk. Yet he also felt a strange connection, a bridge forming across the fear and distance between species. Time passed, though it felt like only moments. The ruined hub was silent except for the distant echoes of collapsing metal and the dragon's quiet breaths. Aaron watched as she finished the small portion and looked at him with an expression he could not name. Gratitude? Curiosity? Or perhaps something older, something wiser than him? She tilted her head, and for a moment, the world felt suspended between human and dragon, predator and prey, fear and trust. Aaron felt a pang of longing. He thought of his father, of the stories of heroes who fought not for power but for others. His father had once told him about the dragons, how they were proud, powerful, and often misunderstood. Humans had survived wars because of courage, but dragons had survived because of caution. And here, in the ruins of a forgotten station, a small dragon trusted him enough to accept what little he had. Then a sound broke the stillness, metal scraping against metal, sharp and deliberate. Both the boy and the dragon froze. From the shadows, a scavenger stepped into view, a human like him, but older, meaner, armed with a rusty blade. The scavenger's eyes lit up when he saw the dragon. Easy prey, he muttered, stepping closer. Aaron's hand tightened around a small stone in his pocket. He knew he could not fight the scavenger alone, but he also could not abandon the dragon now. The dragon hissed, a soft, low sound that was more warning than attack. Her wings lifted slightly, revealing the tattered edges and burned marks. She was no fighter now, but she would defend herself if needed. Aaron stood, keeping his body between the scavenger and her. "Leave," he said, his voice trembling but firm. "She isn't yours." The scavenger laughed, cruel and sharp, but Aaron did not back down. Something in him had changed. He was not just a boy with a small meal. He was the son of a man who had taught him to stand for what is right. The dragon, sensing the courage in him, let out a quiet rumble and stepped closer to Aaron, aligning herself beside him. Together they faced the threat, two unlikely allies in a world that had forgotten kindness. The scavenger hesitated, surprised by the boy's defiance and the dragon's silent warning. Aaron's heart raced, but he kept his gaze steady. The ruins seemed to hold their breath with him. Finally, the scavenger spat on the ground and backed away, disappearing into the shadows with a curse. Aaron exhaled, relief washing over him, and glanced at the dragon. She blinked slowly, almost in approval, her wings folding carefully against her back. Aaron knelt again, placing a hand gently on the ground near the dragon. She did not move, only watched, as if trying to understand the human who had risked himself for her. He offered a small smile, unsure if she understood it, but it felt right. In that moment, Aaron realized something profound. Sometimes courage and kindness mattered more than strength or size. Sometimes the smallest gestures could build bonds that even fear could not break. The ruins were quiet once more, and the sun dipped low in the horizon, casting long shadows across the broken platforms. Aaron and the dragon remained there, two lonely figures in a world of ruins, bound by an unspoken promise. Neither knew what would come next, but both understood that this meeting had changed something fundamental. A bridge had been built between species, fragile yet unbreakable, forged by hunger, fear, and the courage to care. The wind whispered through the shattered towers, carrying dust and the faint scent of smoke. Aaron looked at the dragon again, and for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of hope. Not just for himself, but for the world, for the possibility that kindness could survive in the shadows of war and ruin. And the dragon, small and wary, seemed to sense it too, her eyes reflecting a glimmer of trust as the last light of day faded into night. Aaron woke before dawn, the cold wind biting at his cheeks. The ruins were quiet, except for the faint crackle of distant fires. He had spent the night near the collapsed station, keeping watch over the small dragon. She had curled into a tight ball, her wings folded awkwardly against her back. The burns on her scales were still raw, jagged lines that caught the pale morning light. Aaron had never seen anything so delicate and fierce at the same time. The dragon stirred as he approached, lifting her head slowly. Her eyes were cautious, intelligent, and full of unspoken questions. She watched him carefully, the tip of her tail twitching like a pendulum. Aaron held out a small piece of dried food from his bag. She sniffed it, then sniffed him as if trying to measure whether he was friend or danger. Finally she took it, careful not to make sudden movements. "You're hurt," Aaron said softly, though he knew she might not understand words the way humans did. He crouched a little, keeping his body low and non-threatening. "Those wings, what happened to you?" The dragon blinked slowly and lowered her head. She did not speak, but Aaron could see the pain in her eyes. There were scars along her shoulders, her wing membranes burned and frayed, as if she had been through a firestorm. He guessed that she had been chased, trapped, or maybe even attacked by other creatures. Humans had wars, but dragons had wars too, and they were always deadly. Aaron wanted to help, but he had almost nothing. The small ration he had shared yesterday was all he could spare, and he had no medicine, no tools, no dragon knowledge. Still, he stayed near her, hoping that his presence alone would be enough for her to trust him a little. The dragon slowly moved closer to him, inching her claws across the cracked concrete. Her wings twitched with every movement, the frayed edges brushing against stones and metal shards. Aaron flinched when he saw the burns, imagining the heat and pain she must have endured. Yet, despite the injuries, there was something strong and noble in the way she carried herself. She was a survivor. He sat quietly, pulling out a small notebook his father had given him years ago. The pages were mostly empty, but he had drawn maps and notes, memories of the places his father had traveled. He began to sketch the dragon in the notebook, slowly, carefully. Her wings, the patterns of her scales, the curve of her horns. She watched him the entire time, and her ears flicked at every scratch of pencil on paper. Aaron realized she was curious, perhaps even comforted by the attention. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the wind and the distant sounds of scavengers searching for anything valuable. Aaron learned a little by watching her. She moved with caution, never trusting the ground completely. Her eyes followed every shadow, every shift of light. And yet, when she looked at him, there was something different, a spark of recognition, as if she understood that he was not like the others. By mid-morning, Aaron noticed she was trying to move more freely. She stretched her wings slightly, testing the strength in the burned membranes. He spoke softly, "It's okay, take your time." He did not know if she understood, but he hoped his tone carried the meaning. Slowly she flapped her wings once, a small movement that stirred dust around her claws. Aaron felt a flicker of hope. She could still fly, maybe not far, but far enough to survive. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the ruins. Aaron's heart jumped. He looked up and saw dark clouds forming in the sky, but the rumble was not thunder. It was heavier, closer, like something large moving fast. The dragon stiffened, her body flattening toward the ground. Aaron crouched beside her, realizing that she was sensing danger far beyond his own perception. Out of the shadows came the remnants of a hunting party. Unlike the scavenger from yesterday, these were larger, organized, armed with nets, energy lassos, and blades that glinted in the weak sunlight. Their eyes locked on the dragon immediately. Aaron felt a rush of fear, but he did not move. He could not abandon her now. The dragon hissed softly, her wings rising slightly to make herself look larger, though she could barely lift them fully. Aaron placed a hand on her neck, steadying her, and whispered, "Don't fight, not yet." The hunters paused, confused by the human boy standing beside the dragon. One stepped forward, pointing, "Get that creature. It's worth a fortune." Aaron's stomach tightened, but he did not step back. He had no weapon, no chance to fight, yet he felt a surge of determination he had never felt before. "She is not yours," he said louder this time. His voice carried across the ruins, firm and unafraid. The dragon's eyes met his, wide and searching, as if asking why he risked himself for her. Aaron could only shrug slightly, a small smile on his face. "Because it's the right thing." The dragon leaned closer to him, brushing her nose against his shoulder in a strange, comforting gesture. Her whispering thoughts, or perhaps her understanding, seemed to settle on him. She could sense his courage, his humanity, and in that moment the world shifted. The hunters faltered, unsure how to respond to a boy who would not flee and a dragon who moved as if she was not afraid to fight, even in weakness. Aaron realized that the dragon had survived this long because she knew how to read the world, how to wait, and how to trust selectively. Humans too could survive in harsh ways, but hers was different. Strength born from experience, not just muscle. She was older than her appearance suggested, wiser than her size indicated, and now perhaps she saw a reflection of that wisdom in him. The hunters eventually retreated, muttering threats and curses, unwilling to take the risk. Aaron exhaled slowly, relief flooding him, and looked at the dragon. She lowered her wings again, exhausted but alert. Her burned scales glinted faintly in the sunlight, a silent testament to past battles. Aaron reached out and placed a small hand on her side, careful not to touch her burned skin. She did not flinch, only pressed slightly against him. He realized then that she was not just a creature of strength. She was a survivor, a witness to the galaxy's cruelty, and perhaps, in her own way, a teacher. She had endured pain, hunger, and fear, yet she still accepted kindness from a human, something many had denied her. Aaron felt a strange pride, not in himself but in the connection they had formed. As the sun climbed higher, the ruins seemed less threatening, and the dragon's presence felt less like danger and more like companionship. Aaron packed a little more food, sharing it slowly with her. She ate cautiously, her eyes never leaving him. For the first time, Aaron saw a glimmer of trust, something that went beyond fear or survival instincts. He whispered to himself, "We'll get through this, together." The dragon's burned wings twitched once more, and for a moment, it seemed she understood him perfectly. The ruins of the old transit hub no longer felt empty. They were a place where courage, trust, and small acts of kindness could exist, even in a world that had forgotten them. And for both the boy and the dragon, that was enough to begin. Aaron and the dragon stayed near the ruins for the rest of the day. The wind carried the smell of smoke and dust, but also the faint sweetness of wildflowers growing through cracks in the concrete. The dragon's wings twitched as she tested their strength again, trying to lift herself slightly off the ground. Aaron watched closely, his heart pounding each time she tried. He could see the burns were worse than he had first imagined, deep scars that would never fully heal. Yet despite the pain, she moved with careful precision, surviving each small test of strength. As the afternoon sunlight shifted across the ruins, Aaron thought of his father. The man had been a veteran of wars that spanned dozens of systems. He had seen battles that Aaron could only imagine, fought creatures far more terrifying than the dragon before him, and yet he had always returned with stories of sacrifice, bravery, and kindness. His father had taught him that strength alone was meaningless without heart. Aaron could feel the weight of that lesson now, pressing on his chest like a stone. He had inherited it whether he wanted it or not. He knelt beside the dragon, offering another small portion of food. She sniffed it carefully, then ate, her eyes never leaving him. He reached out to touch the scales along her neck, and she flinched slightly but did not pull away. "I wish you didn't have to live like this," Aaron whispered. "No one deserves it." She blinked slowly, a soft rumble in her throat, almost like an answer, but he could not be sure. Dragons spoke in ways humans could rarely understand. The boy remembered stories his father had told him about dragons in the old wars. They were creatures of power, often merciless, and yet intelligent beyond imagination. Many humans feared them and some had tried to enslave them. But his father had said that even in war, the true measure of strength was mercy, and the ability to protect those who could not defend themselves. Aaron now understood what his father had meant. It was not just about surviving, it was about choosing what kind of survivor you wanted to be. As evening fell, the shadows in the ruins grew longer. Aaron noticed how alert the dragon was, scanning the broken buildings, listening to the smallest sounds. She had been hunted for a reason, he realized, and it was not just for her scales or size. She carried the memories of a fallen species, survivors of battles that humans could barely imagine. And yet, here she was, accepting kindness from a boy she had no reason to trust. The weight of her experience pressed on him, heavier than any weapon he had ever held. Aaron thought about his own life, about the loss he had carried since his father died. His mother had gone away after the war, leaving him to fend for himself. He had learned to scavenge, to move quietly, to avoid trouble. But he had never expected to meet a dragon, let alone one that seemed to understand him. He felt a strange connection to her, a shared sense of loss and resilience. Both of them had lost family, both had been forced to survive in worlds that were cruel and unforgiving. Night fell and the ruins grew colder. Aaron built a small fire, careful not to burn the dragon or draw attention. She stayed close, her body curled near his, wings folded protectively around herself. He offered her warmth and food and she accepted, not fully trusting but trusting enough. As they sat together, he realized that courage was not always about facing a battlefield. Sometimes it was about standing in the shadows and offering what little you had to help another, even when the world would never see it. The dragon moved closer to him, nudging her nose against his hand. He felt a twinge of fear at her size even now, but it was mixed with awe. She was a survivor, a creature of fire and scale, burned and broken yet still moving forward. Aaron realized that humans and dragons were not so different in this way. Both species had faced wars, loss, and fear, and yet both had the ability to endure. He felt a quiet pride, not for himself but for what he saw in her, the strength that came not from claws or fire, but from resilience and wisdom. As he drifted to sleep, Aaron thought of his father's lessons again. A soldier's life was often measured in victories and losses, in battles won and friends lost. But the true measure was in the moments of choice, the decisions made when no one was watching. He had chosen to help the dragon, to feed her, to risk himself for her safety. And now, sitting beside her in the cold ruins, he felt the weight of that choice settling on him like a shield. It was heavy but it made him feel alive. In the morning the ruins were quiet. The dragon tested her wings again, flapping slowly, then lifting herself a few inches into the air. Aaron cheered softly and she let out a small rumble as if answering him. She was still weak, still burned, but she was alive, and more importantly she had accepted trust, something humans and dragons alike often found hard to give. Aaron understood that this bond was fragile, a connection born of mutual need and respect. The day passed slowly, filled with small lessons. The dragon moved cautiously, teaching him to watch, to listen, to notice the world beyond his own fears. Aaron shared what little he had, and in return she shared her presence, a quiet strength that made him feel braver than he had ever felt. Together they were learning to survive not just with skill but with heart. By evening, Aaron sat on a fallen pillar, watching the dragon rest beside him. He thought of his father again and of all the stories of bravery, of sacrifice, and of hope. He realized that survival was not just about strength or speed or intelligence, it was about the courage to care when the world had taught you to fear. And in that moment, Aaron understood something that would stay with him forever. Even in a galaxy that had forgotten kindness, even in a world scarred by war, humans could still choose compassion, and that choice could change everything. The dragon opened one eye and looked at him, and Aaron felt a strange warmth, a quiet confirmation that his father's lessons were not forgotten. They sat together in silence, two survivors from different worlds, learning from each other, trusting each other, and carrying the weight of their past with courage. For the first time since his father's death, Aaron felt a sense of purpose. Not as a soldier, not as a scavenger, but as someone who could choose kindness when it mattered most. And beside him, the dragon, burned, cautious and wise, shared in that choice, understanding that humans were not weak, but capable of something far stronger, the heart to endure and the courage to protect. The night was cold, and the ruins of the old transit hub were quiet except for the distant crackle of dying fires. Aaron sat beside the dragon, whose wings, though burned and fragile, stretched slightly in the dim moonlight. The stars above were scattered and distant, cold points of light in a sky that seemed vast and indifferent. Aaron shivered, pulling his thin jacket tighter, but he felt a warmth beside him, the dragon, alive and watching. She had been silent all day, observing him, testing him, learning him as he had learned her. Aaron had shared his last bits of food, kept her safe from scavengers, and stayed awake to make sure no one came to harm her. He had risked himself for her without understanding why, and now, as he watched her resting, he felt a strange bond forming. It was not fear, not pity, it was respect. The dragon had endured far more than he ever would, yet she still trusted him. Suddenly, a distant rumble broke the silence. Aaron stiffened. He had learned to recognize the sounds of approaching threats. Scavengers, mercenaries, even rogue machines. But this was different. It was not hostile. It was a vibration in the air, a subtle pressure that made the scales along her wings twitch. The dragon lifted her head, ears alert, nostrils flaring. Aaron felt her tension and understood that she sensed something ancient, something beyond ordinary danger. Without warning, she leaned closer to him, her head barely reaching his shoulder. Her hot breath warmed his cheek, and for a moment, Aaron felt the power in her presence, the sheer intelligence behind her gaze. Then she whispered. It was not a voice humans could hear with ears, but a vibration that pressed directly against his mind. He froze, heart hammering as her words formed in his thoughts, clear and impossible. You are his son, she said softly. The one who carries his courage, his choice, his legacy. Aaron blinked, startled. He had never expected her to know about his father. How do you know? He whispered aloud, though the words sounded small in the vast ruins. I have watched, she continued, her voice a ripple of thought that carried both warmth and authority. Humans do not always show what they are capable of. You may be small, fragile, and untested, yet in your heart you hold the power of hope, the strength to endure, and the courage to protect. Your father gave you more than life, he gave you a choice. Aaron felt a lump in his throat. He had always struggled with the absence of his father, the weight of living without guidance. Now, the dragon was telling him that he had inherited something far greater than he had imagined. His father's bravery, his morality, his strength, it was inside him, waiting to be awakened. The dragon shifted, lifting herself slightly. Her wings stretched, delicate and scarred, as if showing the proof of her own survival. I have seen the galaxy, boy, she whispered. I have seen species rise and fall, wars ignite and end, but few can endure without losing themselves. Humans, you endure not because you are the strongest but because you care when it matters most. Your father lived this truth. And now you do too. Aaron's chest tightened. He felt tears sting his eyes, though he did not move to wipe them. The words carried the weight of history, of battles he could never see, of sacrifices that spanned worlds. And yet they were personal, aimed at him alone. He realized in that moment that his small acts, the meal, the protection, the courage to face danger, had meaning far beyond what he had imagined. The dragon's eyes softened, reflecting the pale starlight. Do not think your choices are small, she said. A single act of kindness can ripple across the stars. A single moment of courage can change the fate of worlds. You offered me food, yet in doing so, you have awakened something the galaxy had almost forgotten. Aaron's mind raced. He could barely comprehend the depth of what she was saying. A simple act, a meal shared, had carried consequences he could not see. He had thought himself powerless, just a boy in the ruins, but the dragon's words made him realize that even the smallest person could alter the course of events. I just wanted to help, he murmured, voice shaking. I didn't think it would matter. The dragon's whisper was gentle but firm. It matters more than you know. The galaxy has long underestimated humans. You endure where others fail. You act where others flee. And even in the shadow of war and loss, you choose to protect, to give, to care. That is the measure of true strength. Aaron swallowed hard, trying to absorb the weight of her words. The ruins seemed smaller now, the cold less biting, the stars above less distant. He felt a connection to his father, to the dragon, and to something larger than himself. Courage, kindness, and hope were not just stories. They were real, and they could shape the universe in ways no weapon could. The dragon leaned closer again, pressing her forehead gently against his. The warmth of her presence, the hum of her thoughts, was calming. She had whispered truths older than the stars, secrets of the galaxy that had survived countless generations. And she had chosen to share them with him, a human boy in the ruins, because he had shown the courage to care. Remember this, she whispered. Your father's sacrifice was never in vain. Your choices will not be forgotten. And even when you feel small, weak, or alone, know that the galaxy watches, and it will remember those who act with courage. Aaron felt the weight of her words settle into his chest, a quiet fire that replaced the cold and fear he had carried for so long. He nodded slowly, unsure if she could see it, but certain she understood. I will remember, he whispered back. The dragon's eyes glimmered in the moonlight. She stretched her wings fully once, careful with the burns, and lifted herself slightly into the air. For a moment she hovered above the ruins, majestic and strong, though scarred. Then she descended again, crouching beside him. Her whisper continued, soft, almost a murmur against his mind. Courage is not the absence of fear. Kindness is not the absence of danger. You have both, Aaron. You carry your father's legacy, and now, you carry your own. The boy felt a quiet awe. For the first time he understood the depth of his father's teachings. And for the first time he realized that the galaxy was bigger, stranger, and more alive than he had ever imagined. A single choice, a single act of care had bridged worlds, species, and histories. And the dragon, burned and wary, had shared that secret with him, leaving him speechless, humbled, and changed. As dawn approached, painting the ruins in pale gold, Aaron watched the dragon's eyes. She was more than a creature of fire and scale. She was a witness to the galaxy, a keeper of truths and a teacher of courage. And for a boy who had thought himself small and powerless, her whisper carried a message stronger than any weapon, that even in a universe filled with fear and loss, humans could endure, inspire, and change the course of fate through acts of compassion. The ruins were quiet again, but Aaron did not feel alone. He had heard her truth, and it would stay with him forever. The dragon curled near him, her wings partially lifted, and he knew that together, they had formed a bond that even the galaxy could not erase. The ruins were quiet in the early morning light. The fires from the day before had died, leaving only smoke curling into the sky. Aaron sat beside the dragon, watching her move carefully among the rubble. Her wings, though still scarred and frayed, stretched fully as she tested their strength again. She had grown calmer since their first meeting, her trust in him steady and unspoken. Aaron too felt a quiet confidence. He had faced fear, protected another life, and heard truths that changed him forever. He offered her the last portion of his ration, and she took it without hesitation. Her eyes, deep and wise, followed him as he moved among the ruins, checking for danger. In these moments he felt the strange weight of responsibility settle on him, not just for himself but for her, for the creatures of the galaxy, and for the legacy of his father. The lessons of courage, kindness, and sacrifice had grown roots inside him, shaping him into someone more than a boy. The sound of engines broke the calm. Aaron looked up to see a scouting vessel descending toward the ruins, its lights scanning the terrain. Humans rarely traveled here, and the dragon stiffened, sensing potential threat. Aaron stayed low beside her, keeping still, but he noticed something remarkable. She did not panic. She had learned from him. She waited, alert but calm, trusting that he would act wisely. The vessel landed softly and figures emerged. Aaron recognized them as the galactic authorities who monitored species considered dangerous or rare. They had heard reports of a dragon in the sector. Usually these encounters ended with capture, study, or worse. But Aaron did not fear them in the same way. He had faced fear and chosen compassion, and he had learned that humans could endure without needing to fight. He stepped forward, placing himself between the dragon and the authorities, his hands raised. "Do not harm her," he said clearly, voice steady. "She is not your prisoner. She is not a threat." The authorities hesitated. They had never seen a human boy stand with such calm authority before, nor had they expected a dragon to remain still beside him. The dragon shifted slightly, her eyes meeting Aaron's, and he saw a spark of understanding. She would not flee, she would not strike. Together they presented something the galaxy rarely saw: mutual trust and courage without aggression. One of the officers stepped forward, scanner in hand, but Aaron did not move. He spoke quietly, calmly, explaining what had happened, how he had shared food, protected her from scavengers, and earned her trust. The dragon remained beside him, her wings folding neatly, her head tilted in observation. The officers exchanged glances, unsure how to proceed. They had expected fear and struggle, yet here was a human who had proven that courage could come in small, quiet ways. The dragon let out a soft rumble, almost a laugh, and it carried to Aaron's mind. She had judged the humans before, harshly, as a species that often caused destruction. But now she saw something different. Humans could act with restraint, with compassion, with courage even when no one was watching. She had whispered the truth to him the night before, and now the galaxy itself bore witness to it. The officers stepped back, realizing they could not take action without violating what was clearly a bond of trust. Aaron's courage and the dragon's restraint had shifted the balance. They departed, leaving the boy and dragon alone in the ruins. Aaron exhaled, relief washing over him, but he felt more than relief, he felt pride. Not in himself, exactly, but in humanity, in what humans could become when they chose to act with heart. As the day progressed, the dragon rose into the air, flapping her wings with growing strength. Aaron watched, amazed, as she hovered above the ruins, turning in the sunlight. She was free, yet she circled back, dipping close to him as if to confirm the bond they shared. She had survived wars, fires, and hunters, yet she had accepted him, a human boy, as an ally. In that moment, the galaxy's prejudice seemed small and irrelevant. Humans were not defined by fear or weakness, they were defined by choice. Aaron realized the full weight of her whisper from the night before. The galaxy had misjudged humans for centuries, seeing only the power of weapons, the scars of wars, and the fear of failure. But it had missed the quiet courage, the small acts of kindness, the ability to protect and endure when no one was looking. That was the power of humanity. That was why they survived when stronger species fell, why they endured when the galaxy expected them to fail. The dragon landed gently beside him, her eyes reflecting the golden sunlight. She nudged him softly, her way of showing acknowledgement, respect, and trust. Aaron smiled, understanding that this simple gesture carried more meaning than any words. They had faced fear together, learned from each other, and proven something the galaxy often overlooked. Strength was not measured by scale, weapon, or firepower, but by the courage to care, the will to endure, and the choice to protect others, even when it cost everything. Days passed, and the ruins began to feel less like a place of danger and more like a sanctuary. Aaron moved among the broken towers with the dragon by his side. He shared his small rations, learned her movements, and felt her intelligence in ways words could not describe. She had become more than a companion. She was a teacher, a witness, and a reminder that the universe could be changed by unexpected courage. Eventually the dragon prepared to leave. Her wings, though still scarred, were strong enough to lift her into the sky. Aaron watched as she rose, circling above him once, a silent promise in her eyes. Then she shot toward the horizon, leaving him alone in the ruins but not truly alone. He felt the echo of her words, the reminder that the galaxy was watching, that humans mattered in ways the stars could not always see. Aaron returned to his small home near the edge of the city, carrying the lessons of the dragon with him. He had seen what humans could be when they acted with compassion and courage. He had witnessed how even the smallest choice could ripple across the galaxy. And though the world was full of fear, danger, and war, he understood now that humans were never truly weak. They endured, inspired, and changed the course of events simply by choosing to act with heart. The galaxy had misjudged humans, but Aaron knew that was not forever. He had lived it, seen it, and felt it in the presence of a dragon who had whispered truths older than the stars. One act of kindness, one courageous choice, had left an impression stronger than any weapon, louder than any shout, and more lasting than any empire. Humans were capable of greatness because they could endure and care when no one else would. And in the silent ruins, with the first light of dawn touching the broken towers, Aaron finally understood that the galaxy's judgment was never the measure of humanity. Choice was. Courage was. Kindness was. And humans, he realized, were never truly alone, for the bonds they created, between species, across worlds, and through acts of heart, would endure long after fear and war had faded into memory. He smiled softly, knowing that somewhere above, the dragon flew free, carrying a piece of humanity into the skies. And he, a boy shaped by loss and love, had seen the truth. Humans were capable of changing the galaxy, one small, courageous act at a time.